The train between Dublin and Belfast is convenient and fairly quick. My lovely wife and I are entitled to free travel, so an upgrade to first class is quite cheap for us. We ordered breakfast, 12 euros I think, coffee and juice included. And the food was decent, not spectacular, but I didn't feel cheated. You get plenty of coffee, and it was surprisingly good. The bread, okay, that was a criminal offense. And the egg was steamed, a little over, but not tragically. This, by the way, is just me walking around a neighborhood and reflecting. This is not a history lesson. So, heading west from the train station toward Falls Road, the first thing I notice is Divis Tower, decorated with tricolors and Palestinian flags. A real treat. This is a famous building. In 1969, young Patrick Rooney, a 9-year-old, was accidentally shot dead by RUC, what would you call them, troops, firing a BMG recklessly into the building from the safety of an armored vehicle. I guess they feared for their lives. No prosecutions, of course. Later, the UK Army manned an observation post on the roof and occupied the top 2 floors, but they were never able to access the building except by helicopter. There was also the INLA bombing in 1982, shortly after the hunger strikes, in which 1 UK soldier and 2 local children were killed, and I think 1 soldier and 3 other local non-combatants were injured by a remote-controlled explosive device. Quite a history here. We see old Irish Joe here, ridiculed by the people he identifies with, but not by our so-called leaders. That's Sinn Féin President Mary Lou MacDonald on her knees offering a shamrock. Ireland says no. Irish politicians would gladly lick the blood off his hands. Here are some new murals, which I've come here to see. We're in Divis Street, which is what this section of Falls Road is called. Sorry if that's confusing. This is all based on images supplied by Palestinian artists and reproduced by local painters. So far as I know, 3 Palestinian contributors have been murdered by Israeli forces since the project started. We're fortunate to have received their work before it was too late. The sincerity here is touching, powerfully so. And I think that the local artists have honored and remained true to the underlying spirit here. I think you can feel it as you walk past. I told you in an earlier video that a lot of Irish people feel a genuine connection to Palestinians. In both Northern Ireland and Palestine, internment by the occupying power is commonplace. Internment meaning you're sentenced without having been tried. In other words, administrative detention, extrajudicial confinement. Irish Republicans saw their interned members as POWs, but the UK took that status away and denominated them common criminals, in spite of the fact that they weren't convicts, so they really couldn't be criminals. But you can't argue with a Calvinist muppet.
Crime is crime is crime. It is not political, it is crime. And there can be no question of granting political status.
Of course they were political prisoners, just like a lot of Palestinians today. That's why this painting says so much to anyone who's acquainted with the history. According to Haaretz, there might be as many as 3,400 Palestinians in administrative detention today, from a population that's at roughly 5.5 million, and falling. So their experiences of arbitrary detention, of widespread, deep-rooted institutional injustice administered by a hostile foreign entity remind us of our own experiences with His Majesty's government, so we do sympathize sincerely. Here's a depiction of the Flower Massacre. Hungry people lured by food, then slaughtered. The food was bait for just another of many IDF atrocities. The troubles here were never as intense as what's going on in Gaza, where the level of violence and cruelty is astonishing. You'd have to look back to Cromwell to find anything in Irish history on the scale of Gaza that's equally sadistic. But we have been there too, sadly. A bit farther west on Divis Street, about where it becomes Falls Road again, you'll find a small garden of remembrance laid out like a Latin cross. We've got a grand one in Dublin, but I rather prefer this one. It's a memorial to IRA members who died in the Troubles, with some emphasis on the local lads, understandably. That's the D Company Belfast Brigade. Civilians and prisoners who died are also commemorated. There's an air of tranquility here, of sorrow without loss, if that makes any sense. And it seems quiet, very much in defiance of all the traffic roaring past. I'm gonna stop talking now. Let's just look around together. This isn't a place for talking. This, incredibly, is a daycare center. It looks like a row of shipping containers in front of this factory. His Majesty's government sure looks out for the little sprouts, eh? I'm sorry I can't get any closer. Bad look. Geezer, video camera, small children. Not going there. Now, turn north on Northumberland Street, and you'll find additional murals with a more Republican flavor. It is not those who can inflict the most, but those who can endure the most, who will conquer. The quote is from playwright Terence McSweeney, a Sinn Féin Lord Mayor of Cork, who died a hunger striker in 1920. The central picture is Francis Hughes, a more recent hunger striker who made the ultimate sacrifice during the 1981 strike while interned in Long Kesh. He's shown here in the company of numerous Republicans from history. And not far from a homie of mine.
There's Frederick Douglass. All right.
There are walls, fence line, and gates all around Belfast. A miniature iron curtain, keeping Republicans and Unionists physically separated when necessary. Notice that it's open, all right, but it hasn't been demolished. These are all over Derry, too, and are called, and I kid you not, peace walls, or peace lines, paging George Orwell. Anyway, Good Friday Agreement or no, they're still here, just in case. If you'd like to learn more about this, there's a Peace Wall archive online with some truly memorable pictures and commentary. Well worth a visit. Link in the description. I don't want to make too much of it because this video is concerned with the content of the murals and the sentiments behind that. But just so you know, virtually all of the surfaces we've looked at are barrier structures that have been painted. My lovely wife and I had lunch here at Burger Guys, right on the corner of Northumberland and Divis. I recommend it. Chef is from the neighborhood, so a local establishment which we always like to support. This burger costs around £8. Well, okay, I've already eaten half of it, but you know what I mean. It's the classic thin patty, Shake Shack style. Everything on the menu is 7 to 10 quid, so economical and good. My favorite combination. And they deliver. We had to return home sooner than I would have liked. Some of you know that I have a verticality budget of about an hour. 2 if I'm determined and willing to eat some pain. I try to conserve the budget with taxi rides, even for fairly short distances. That's how I've adapted, anyway. I would have stayed longer if I had been better prepared. Next time I will be. So, Falls Road, yeah, it feels very familiar. I grew up in the Bronx in the mid-50s through the 60s, and yeah, I know what you've heard, but to me it was an absolute paradise. The birthplace of hip-hop and home to America's finest graffiti artists. To this day, I regularly have dreams where I'm back living there, and it's 1960s Bronx, but I'm an adult. Anyway, there's a great vibe among the local residents here in this neighborhood, which reminds me of that Bronx vibe that I grew up loving. I feel at ease and at home here. Everyone I've spoken to has been good people. Before I come back to Belfast, I'm going to bring you along to Drogheda, one of several towns where Gaza happened to tens of thousands of Irish. I'll tell you about the Cromwellian invasion and its eerie similarity to what Israel is doing to the Palestinians right now. Of course, more coffee videos are in the works, and some pretty big news on that front too, plus other content as well. So keep in touch. Cheers!